Hey guys, welcome back to Mad About Skin. In today's video, we're talking all things retinol and discussing some alarming developments when it comes to regulation of my personal favourite retinoid of choice. I think we've probably all heard of the retinol ban, which seems to be impacting a lot of consumers globally. However, it now seems that they're coming for our retinol with an A. Recently, the Canadian government has passed legislation limiting the amount of retinol which can be present in products to quite a low amount. We've also recently heard that the European Union are looking into increasing regulations surrounding retinol, potentially mimicking the retinol ban which has just taken effect in that jurisdiction. This has got a lot of people alarmed and asking questions around, will we see the disappearance of retinol the way that retinol seems to be being phased out? Well, don't panic, we're going to talk about it all in today's video. Sit back, relax, let's talk the future of retinol. Now, in today's video, I'm going to share my thoughts, feelings, and opinions, but of course, I want to hear yours too. So sound off in the comment section below. Do you think this is just a case of classic government overreach, people being a little bit hysterical about an ingredient that's finding its way into our skincare routines? Or do you think there's some genuine and legitimate concerns? What do you guys think? Let me know below. Whatever your thoughts, if you enjoy this style of content where we really do a deep dive under the hood of everything that's going on in skincare, then make sure to let me know by reaching down and giving the video a big thumbs up and a like. The more likes a video gets, the more widely YouTube will distribute it on its platform. So from the bottom of my heart, love to each and every one of you. Now, without further ado, let's cut that waffle and delve straight on in. Now, the eagle-eyed amongst you might have noticed this is back-to-back videos here on the channel. We had one yesterday, which if you missed, I'll leave a link to it up there. We've got another video today. That's because this week we're celebrating Skincare Week here on the channel. This is something I do every single year at the start of July, where we increase on double the frequency of uploads from every other day to daily. I know that this is a time where a lot of people are starting to look at their skincare routine as we come into summer, and so I like to increase the frequency to hopefully help you guys on your skincare journey. It also gives me a great opportunity to tackle some of the content which I've had on my filming schedule but never really got around to creating, and today's video is one of them. So what exactly is happening with retinol? We're first going to talk about that. I'm then going to come on to my own thoughts, feelings and opinions, and of course the future of retinol and where I see this going. So recently we saw an increase in Canadian legislation which actually outlawed the use of retinol in over-the-counter skincare products over a concentration of 0.05%. Now, 0.05% when it comes to retinol is actually a mid-strength. It's not super low, it's not like a beginner strength, it's a mid-strength that I think could work well for almost everyone. However, most people will gravitate upwards when it comes to their concentration, probably ending up with something like this. This is the Geek Gorgeous A-Game 20. This is actually 4 times the now legal allowed limit of retinol in one product, so expect to see things like the Geek Gorgeous and the super popular The Ordinary Retinal Emulsion phased from sale over the next couple of months and years in the Canadian market. This isn't just limited to Canada though. Recently, the European Union announced that they'd be looking into retinol as an ingredient and seeing whether to apply the same restrictions that they recently imposed on retinol. Those restrictions on retinol have led to a wholesale removal of products from the market. Lots of brands turning their back on retinol and looking towards retinol as another alternative. The same theory could happen though with retinol, though over a much longer time period. Anyone that understands European Union regulations and lawmaking know that things happen at a glacial pace. Don't expect any change in that market to happen before 2030, 2031, because that's genuinely how long it takes. But I think it's interesting that they put this into motion with retinol the way that they did with retinol 5 or 6 years ago, and it's something that we can expect coming down the line. Of course, where these big markets, Canada and the European Union, do account for a good chunk of skincare sales, expect to see that other countries might follow suit. I definitely think with the gradual phasing out of retinol as an ingredient, obviously attention of these regulators shifts to other options. We've seen restrictions on tretinoin come into place in countries where previously that prescription strength option was available over the counter. Not anymore. We've seen it actually phased from sale in certain countries and finding it increasingly hard to get prescriptions for. So I think the whole retinoid landscape is changing. So what does all this mean for us, the consumer? We're going to talk about that now in this section of the video. Well, first and foremost, retinol is perfectly safe. There are decades worth of studies into retinol showing just how effective it is for minimizing fine lines and wrinkles and how well tolerated it is on the skin. You're much less likely to get sensitivity with retinal than what you are with retinol, and the results are in some cases up to 11 times better than the equivalent strength retinol. So I definitely think retinal is where it's at when it comes to over-the-counter retinoids, but that doesn't mean it's going to work for everyone. As with anything in skincare, it's perfectly possible to have a reaction to or a sensitivity because of retinol, which is why patch testing before you introduce a new product is so important. However, I think when it comes to these increases in regulations, it does strike me a little bit, and this is just my thoughts and opinions, as government overreach. The reason I say this is a lot of these changes are actually driven by lobbying from big pharmaceutical companies or industry bodies which actually have a built-in incentive to restrict over-the-counter options. I think a really good example of this in the real world is the use of peroxide-based teeth whitening applications in the European Union. Used to be possible 10-15 years ago, but then due to intense lobbying by the dental industry, they actually restricted and removed peroxide-based teeth whitening options from sale on the general market. That means that things like Crest whitening strips were no longer available for sale in the European Union. And this was really driven by the dental industry in terms of the lobbying for this change, which of course, as a result, with people not being able to do things over the counter, they then had to go for an in-office dental treatment, and that got their cash registers ringing. This is something that happened in the European Union, and of course, things like the Crest whitening strips are now available internationally with very few issues across a whole suite of other countries. But due to that lobbying, that's when these regulations changed. And I think the same thing is kind of happening when it comes to retinoids. A lot of this lobbying is happening in the background, and there seems to be an increasing drive to restrict over-the-counter options, which of course then means that people have to invest their coin in other things which require visits, face-to-face consultations, or online options too, as opposed to just walking into a pharmacy or drugstore and picking up a product. I think this is a real shame because not only does it add costs to our skincare routine without what I can see any particular additional benefit, but I also think it restricts choice. And I'm a huge advocate for consumer choice, treating people like grown-ups, like adults, letting us make our own decisions when it comes to our skincare products. Of course, we do need regulations to stop underhand corporations and businesses from, unfair practices. I'm not against regulation, but I think it has to be balanced against, what's actually going to be advantageous for us, the consumer. And I'm not sure that an increase in restrictions on retinol is actually going to deliver. In the case of the Canadian restrictions, they've said it's as a result of the risk of increased sensitivity from using a high-strength retinol. Well, of course, that is a side effect. If you go in too harsh, too high a concentration to start off with, you will get side effects, sensitivity, and irritation. But most products come with very clear instructions on how to incorporate retinol into their skincare routine, and some of the onus needs to be on the consumer doing the research to make sure that they're using it appropriately, they're going in with the right strength for their needs. I think we're quite educated as skincare consumers and we can work that out for ourselves. A little risk of increased irritation doesn't seem to me a justified reason for restricting the sale of an over-the-counter product, which is growing in popularity. That's just my hot take, and I would love to hear yours. So where does the future lie when it comes to retinol? Well, I think with the exception of the Canadian market, which obviously has seen those restrictions, I can't see any other markets imposing restrictions in the short term. As I said, the European Union might be looking into this, but we're talking 5 or 6 years down the line, and the whole skincare landscape is probably likely to have changed by then anyway, so I wouldn't worry too much about that. If you're watching this from the UK, which is where I am, the UK is no longer in the European Union and therefore will unlikely follow any regulation increase from the European Union anyway. So there is going to be a very limited amount of change when it comes to retinol, but it's something worth having on our radar. I definitely think when it comes to over-the-counter retinoids, retinol remains where it's at. You get increased results in terms of minimizing fine lines and wrinkles and smoothing out the skin, and it's less sensitizing than other retinoids which are available. This for me is ding 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 holy grail territory, because any product that delivers greater results with fewer side effects has to be a win. There are always going to be prescription strength options such as tazarotene and tretinoin, which are fantastic if your skin can tolerate them and you have access to them. It's all about presenting the consumer with choice so we can make out what's the best decision when it comes to our own skin's needs. For me, I decided that's retinol, but for others it might be prescription strength options. And I think by restricting some without restricting others, it does mean that we're limiting choice of consumers. And I think ultimately that's going to be of detriment to our skincare routines. Or what do you guys think? What's your hot take and what preferred retinoid do you reach for? Sound off in the comments section below. The purpose of this video really was just in response to the barrage of questions and concerns that I've got from you guys over the past couple of days since the announcement of that Canadian restriction about what's actually going to happen with retinol. The good news is, unless you are a Canadian consumer where there will be restrictions, for the rest of us, nothing's going to change. If retinol is your go-to retinoid of choice, keep on using it, because honestly, I think the results could be fabulous. For people that are looking for other alternatives, I'll be coming out with a video later on in Skincare Week about the different retinoids that are available and which I think would work best for each skin type and budget. So look out for that if you're looking to shop around. Wherever you are in the world, guys, stay safe, stay well, and love your skin. Take care. Bye.